By saying that our monthly theme is come on, get real. Come on, get real about life, about relationships, about living into your dreams and hopes and desires. Get real by bringing a large dose of reality, capital R, standing for God, to your life. That's what we're doing this month. And last Sunday, we talked about getting real about life's lessons. And if you weren't here, or you didn't watch online, or you haven't watched the YouTube video, or you haven't gone up and listened to the audio, if you haven't done any of those things, and therefore didn't hear last Sunday, I would absolutely recommend that you do one of those things so that you can get perhaps a new perspective on the idea of life's lessons. And I'll just give you a little preview is, I don't believe in them. So there you go. And I told you why not. And we changed that with something else. So jump online and listen to that or watch the YouTube video if you missed that last Sunday, because we got real about it. And by the way, just a little heads up, starting sometime into this week, we will have yet another way that you, if you missed Sunday or you want to hear it again, another way you can do that. We're going to be putting out a podcast. So those of you who like to be able to download it on your whatever device it might be, your iPad or your phone, you can do that starting this week. We just have one more little detail to take care of, and then, right, Lonnie, one more little detail, and then it will be up and running. So that's kind of exciting. One more step into the world of technology. So today, the day that the greeting card, candy, flower, and lingerie industry just loves, today, Valentine's Day, we are going to get real about relationships. Now, if you are not in a committed partnership, in a marriage or a sacred relationship, don't run out of the room, because that's not all I'm going to talk about today. I know I've had some people who aren't in that kind of relationship say they don't like coming to church on Valentine's Day. Well, I'm glad. If you feel that way, I'm glad you chose to come today, because I am not going to talk just about that kind of relationship, because we are in relationships all the time. We are in relationships whenever you turn around, you are in some kind of relationship. Whether it's with your extended family, with your church family, with your colleagues and coworkers, with your friends, with the grocery store clerk or your favorite barista at the coffee shop. Whether it's the person behind you who's tailgating you on the freeway, right? You're in a relationship with all those people, including if you're in a committed partnership, in that relationship as well. And then there's another key relationship that you are in, and that is the relationship with the God of your being, the relationship with yourself and your, if we will call it, your higher self. So all of those relationships are what we're going to talk about today. And the principles that we're going to talk about apply in each and every one of those kinds of relationship. Ernest Holmes, in the 365 Science of Mind, which is kind of 365 days of ideas from Ernest Holmes, our founder, on page 50, Ernest Holmes says, "We can all live happily, harmoniously, and successfully with one another when each of us practices a conscious recognition of the presence of love within ourselves and within others. We can overcome troubles and difficulties that we have allowed to enter our lives when we remember that love is creating and is the creative and sustaining presence within us all." Key phrase up there at the beginning of that statement is that we can all live happily and harmoniously and successfully with one another when each of us practices a conscious recognition of the presence of love within ourselves and with other. Practices is that key word there. Actually, practices a conscious recognition. So, being in relationships, whichever kind it is, takes a conscious practice. Ernest Holmes also says in our Science of Mind textbook many times that love points the way and law makes the way possible. For love to point the way with us, we have to be actively engaged in it. Love is not just a noun, it is definitely a verb. So today, I want us to talk about these beautiful, empowering words of Ernest, but how do we bring them into our lives and create happier, more sacred, more holy relationships, even if it's with the person who's tailgating us on the freeway, no matter what that relationship might be. So we're going to look at 3 ideas that will help us, because to talk theory about love is wonderful and great, but it doesn't do us anything unless we get down into the nitty-gritty of it. And I love these words from Marianne Williamson in her book, Return to Love. She said, "Love takes more than crystals and rainbows. It takes discipline and practice. It's not just a sweet sentiment from a Hallmark card. It's a radical commitment to a different way of being, a response to life that is at odds with the rest of the world." Well, I wouldn't say the entire rest of the world, but with a chunk of the world. And I also found this quote in my quotes folder on my computer, and I don't know who originated this, but I won't claim it as my own because I did not. But I love this. "Love is not for lazy persons. To exist in its fullness, sometimes it demands very precise and strong gestures." So I want to offer this morning 3 precise and strong gestures that can help us get real in our relationships and have more satisfying relationships. And I can pretty much guarantee you that as we live these things I'm going to talk about today, our relationships will absolutely be more satisfying, more real, more deep, and more sweet. So the first one is, and Tara, you included this word in your prayer this morning, so I'm so grateful for that, compassion. Compassion. Ernest Holmes, in our textbook, wrote about the master teacher Jesus. He said, "Humble in his humanity, compassionate in his tenderness, he let the great Spirit speak through him in words of love and empathy. He proclaimed his divinity through his humanity and taught that all of us are brothers and sisters. No one ever lived who valued the human soul more than Jesus, for he knew it to be the personification of God." I love that. No one valued the human soul more than Jesus, for he knew it to be the personification of God. So when we have compassion for another human being, we are absolutely seeing in them the personification of God and connecting with it. So what does compassion mean? Well, it could mean listening to someone without judgment, without analyzing, and even without trying to fix them. Just being a listening presence for them. Lonnie and I actually had dinner last night with some friends from a long time ago, and I say it in a life that I lived many years, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Right? It was that long ago that we've known these folks. I've actually known Barb longer than I've known you. Anyway, we had dinner with him last night, and Lonnie was talking a lot about his prison ministry, and they were kind of in awe about all of he does, and they say, "Well, what do you do? What are you saying to these guys to make such an impact on them?" And his answer was so sweet and simple. He said, "I just listen to them. I listen to him. I just give him a space." That's compassion, just being open to listen to someone. Another way to be compassionate is simply to ask, how can I understand this better? How can I understand what you're saying better? How can I understand you better? How can I understand? This is a big one, this next one, which could be an entire sermon and has been and will be in the future, but not today. I'm just going to say it. Recognize that every act a human being does, particularly those moments where they're acting out, doing things that do not meet with your specifications, right? Those things? Every one of those things is actually a cry for love. It is actually a cry for love. Being compassionate means having an understanding for another person's experience, and if there is something that you can offer to support them or alleviate that pain, then you do that. If you can do that, then you do that. I want to give you an extreme example of that, and I thank Jan, who's sitting right there, for giving me an article a couple of weeks ago that was out of the newspaper about an experience that happened on December 21st in Kenya. And this, to me, is extreme compassion. And I affirm for all of us that it is not an experience any of us ever will have, but it is a powerful example of extreme compassion. The article was called "A Lesson Learned on a Bus in Kenya." And the article told the story of a bus driving outside a city in Kenya that had in it Muslims and other people, including Christians. That bus was stopped by a group of Somali terrorists. There were 10 terrorists with gigantic guns, who ordered them off of the bus. And they ordered them for the Muslims to stand here and everybody else to stand here. Well, some of them on the bus knew what might well happen because it had happened before. And that is that the terrorists let the Muslims go, but they slaughtered everybody else. So when they're giving the command in this particular bus, Muslims here, everybody else over here, the Muslims said no. They said no. They would not move from the rest on the bus. One of them, the article said that several of them actually gave headscarves to non-Muslims so that they could wrap their heads and appear to be Muslim. One of the Muslim passengers is quoted as having said, "We stuck together tightly. The militants threatened to shoot us, but we still refused and protected our brothers and sisters. Finally, the militants gave up and left." Is that a powerful story of compassion in an extreme experience? And as I said a moment ago, one I hope none of us ever have to be in. But what an amazing story of compassion on the part of those beautiful individuals, those Muslim individuals who, even here in the United States, often get maligned because of what some very small group of Muslims have misinterpreted their mission on this earth. I love how the article ended. It ended with a little bit of an admonition to America and those of us in America. It said, "Even in the face of death, they," meaning the Muslims, "saw each other first as human beings. That's a lesson worth remembering in a country that's supposed to be a beacon of liberty." Very powerful. So compassion is the first way that we can get real in our relationships. And so I ask you, and I'm going to ask you several things. You have a couple of assignments this week. Is there any place in your life where you can recognize you're being less than compassionate? To anyone in your inner circle or outer circle, to the driver who drives behind you too fast, or to your partner who you get frustrated with, or your child that you get frustrated with. How might you bring more compassion to the table in your life, and how about making that a practice in your life? Ernest Holmes says, "Compassion and caring are the ties that bind us together in mutual understanding and in the unified attempt to uncover the divinity in every one of us. Compassion is the most gentle of all human virtues, for it is the outpouring of the divine givingness of life through us." So bring a new level of compassion. This week of Valentine's, bring a new level of compassion to your relationships. The second idea, and Tara, you said it in your prayer as well, so thanks for that, is kindness. How can we bring more kindness into our relationships? Mother Teresa said it beautifully: be the living expression of God's kindness, kindness in your face, kindness in your smile, kindness in your warm greeting. And the Dalai Lama once said, "My religion is very simple. My religion is kindness." Oh, I love that. So this week on Thursday, we have a new professional spiritual life coach class. We have 6 students who have just put their foot on the journey to become professional spiritual life coaches. And one of these students, I love that we have her in the class, is actually a minister with United Church of Christ at the Beatitudes. But she loves science of mind, and she very much wants to learn everything that practitioners learn. So on Thursday, we had our first class, and she brought to us something that she created for the Beatitudes and brought it to show to us. And I was like, oh man, I wish I'd gotten this a week ago. We would have done the same thing. But we'll do it next year for sure. It's a Lent practice. I know that we don't traditionally do Lent. Lent, for those of you who don't know, is 40 days before Easter. Interesting, that 40 days. I won't go into what that means, but it's a very metaphysical, spiritual number. So 40 days before Easter, Lent is, and that is where we are cleansing and purging ourselves. But in the thing that the student brought to her church is 40 days of random acts of kindness. So 40 days leading up to Easter, and we're already into that, so we can't do total of 40 days, but we could do 40 days and beyond Easter. But every single day, do a random act of kindness. So here's your second charge this morning, that for the next 7 days, just asking 7, all right? Not 40, but you could do 40 if you want. But I'm asking for 7 days that you do a random act of kindness every day for a stranger. So it could be a kind word, a soft word, a smile at a stranger that you do consciously. You probably do this all the time, but I want this to be conscious. It could be giving an anonymous gift to someone. It could be picking up trash in someone's lawn. It could be loading someone's groceries into their car at the grocery store. It could be paying for the coffee of the person behind you, right, in the drive-up line at your favorite coffee shop. And I have to tell you quickly, going through the line after first service, Raleigh Dombeck said the other night, he said it was like 11:30 at night, I went through a drive-through because he said I just had to have a little ice cream cone. So I drove up to the window and ordered an ice cream cone, and it was time for me to pay it. The person behind the window said, "Don't worry, you don't have to pay for it. The car in front of you paid for it." And Raleigh said, "That is so cool. I love that." And the guy behind the window said, "Yes, it's been going on for a half an hour." It's been going on for a half an hour. And Raleigh said, "Well, I am not going to be the one to break it." So then he gave money for whatever the person ordered from behind him. And who knows how long that went on. Isn't that beautiful? Think of that. Think of that pay it forward idea. How beautiful that is. One random act of kindness resulted in a half an hour and more, we don't know how long, but in a half an hour and more of random acts of kindness. So your mission, should you choose to accept it, this week is to do 7 conscious random acts of kindness to a stranger. Now, you're not done, however. You've actually got 7 more. And 7 more are random acts of kindness to someone in your inner circle. Perhaps even your beloved if you have one. But if you don't have one, for your closest friends, for your children, for your parents, for your aunts, for your uncles, for colleagues, whoever might be in there. Because sometimes they're a little bit harder. Yeah? Anyone ever have that might be the experience sometimes? I love this from Lucy. You know Lucy from Charlie Brown? Right, the little kind of grumpy girl, but who also has the psychiatrist sign up. She says, "I love mankind. It's just people I can't stand." So sometimes we say, "I love humanity, but it's my child right now I can't stand, or it's my coworker I can't stand, or it's my spouse I can't stand in this moment." Your job this week, every single day, to make a conscious decision to do a random act of kindness to someone in your inner circle. All right? You got that? Are you going to remember that?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Have you written it down?
Yes.
Good. Okay, rock on. I like that. Because this is what I know. And I do this. So I'm figuring if I do it, you probably do it too. I will think, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that. And Sunday I do it. And Monday I do it. And then Tuesday morning I think about doing it. I'm going to do it. And then Wednesday I'm like, what is it that I was supposed to do? I know there was something I was supposed to do, but I can't remember what it was. If you get there on Wednesday, by the way, and say, "I can't remember what it was," good news. We now have a Wednesday night service. So you can come back here at 6:30 and be reminded of it, because I will tell it to you again. It's a great service. It's intimate. It's close. We have dialogue and conversation. It's really fun. So be here for Wednesday night if you forget this, or if you just want to be here. The third thing, the final thing that will help us get more real in our relationships, and this may at first blush sound like, I don't know how that can really help a relationship. I promise you, any relationship will be benefited by this, and that is for you to be authentic, for you to be real, really who you are, not your best foot, not the facade of, got it all together kind of person, but be real in your relationships. So what does that mean? It means you're willing to be vulnerable. It means you're willing to look foolish every now and then. You're willing to be wrong about something. Oh, man, I don't like that. But it's so powerful when we're willing to be wrong in a relationship. It also means being willing to be clear and direct and honest about what works for you and what doesn't work for you, remembering, of course, the compassion and kindness piece. when you're doing that. When you're doing that, remember the compassion and kindness piece, but be willing to say, this doesn't work for me. I loved it going through the line after first service. Somebody came up to me and said, thank you for that. I really appreciate that because I realize I don't like coming to first service. I'm not awake yet. I fall asleep, not because I'm bored, but because I'm not awake yet. And my partner likes first service, but I'm going to talk about I need to come to second service. I'm like, good. You do that. We'll see how that works out, right? I'm sure they're going to come to a great, but she hadn't even said anything. She hadn't said anything. Like, well, you got to be true to yourself. So really important that you're honest and direct about what is right for you and works for you. And here's a huge one that again could be a whole sermon, but I'm going to give you a snippet of it and hopefully describe it enough so that it makes sense. It was really fun in first service. There were like all these, I saw light bulbs on top of people's heads when I said this in first service. It is way more authentic and real and loving for you to give someone a real no rather than a yes that you don't really mean. And you give it to them, you think, because they want the yes. They want the yes, so you give it to them to make them happy. But let me ask you this. Really, if you really dug down and asked why you said yes when your heart, everything in you said no, usually you will find that you said yes because you were afraid that if you said no, they would get angry, and you don't want the conflict. They would say something mean to you. They wouldn't be nice to you. Or, heaven forbid, they might leave you. That was but in the extreme, but all of those things come up. Does that ring true? That's many times why we say yes. Even our authentic self wants to say no. We're afraid we'll be left, or at the least we'll have conflict, and we don't want that. So, the reason I say it's more loving to give a genuine no than an ingenuine yes, when you are saying yes but don't really mean it, for those reasons I just said, who are you thinking about? Who are you caring about? Yourself. Yeah, I'm caring about myself. I'm not thinking about you. I'm not doing this for you. Really, I'm doing it for me. To be truly loving, you're going to do it for them because you want to, because your heart says yes to that. So to say yes and not mean it is not a loving act, and it's not an authentic act either. We're not getting real with ourselves and our relationships when we say yes, when a no is what you really mean. So again, with compassion and kindness, you are allowed. I'm giving you permission to say no. Now you're going to go home and say to your spouse, my partner said I could say no, and I'm not doing this anymore. Compassion and kindness, right? All right. So here we go. Those three ideas are powerful in bringing forth relationships out here that will just be sweeter, deeper, more real, and more just more fulfilling. But that's not all, because there is a key relationship we haven't spoken about yet, and that is your relationship with you, with the God of your being, with who you truly are. And so I'm inviting you this week to also bring compassion, kindness, and authenticity to yourself. So what would compassion mean if you brought compassion to yourself? Would that mean that the words that you say to yourself inside your head could be a little kinder and softer? Would it mean that you loved yourself even with your human flaws and your frailties and your mistakes? Could it mean that you could look at yourself in those times when you were less than skillful in a relationship and you weren't kind and compassionate and you really kind of blew it? Could you still love yourself and be compassionate with yourself? That's what I want to know this morning, and that is where I invite you into to this week, to simply be compassionate to yourself. So if you know that you've got something going on in you that you haven't been all that compassionate, and my guess is most of us have that. If you have that, I just want you to say out loud, and if you want to get in the power position, which is arms out and chest up, I have compassion for myself. I have compassion for myself. I have compassion for myself. Nice. 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 Kindness. Do you treat yourself kindly? Do you treat yourself kindly? Do you give this body temple, this vehicle of God, what it needs in terms of movement, rest, and nutrition? Do you give yourself play time? So important. Are you kind to yourself? I know I'm part of a dream team. I have been a part of a dream team for at least 5 years, more than that. It's a mastermind group, for those who know that term. It's a group of women. There are 4 of us. We get together every other week and support each other in various areas of our lives, but to bring forth that which we desire to bring forth in the world. So we have the areas of health and vitality, of work and vocation, of relationships, of time and money, and then play and self-care. And we have this chart, and I'm love charts and keeping track of things. So it's my job in this group to write down everybody's goals and then put them in our little chart and send it out to all of us. Kind of crazy in that regard. But anyway, we always have something, and my group is really good about making sure that I put something in play, at least a couple things for 2 weeks in play and self-care. Because I, like many of you, am a giver. You know, I'm a giver. That's my nature, and I love that, and it's amazing. But if I don't ever give to myself, I don't replenish, right? And I know many of you are like that. We give and we give. We have to replenish. So it's really good for me to have it on the list that I am going to play. I'm going to nurture myself in these ways, because I know in 2 weeks I'm going to have 4 women going, did you do that? Accountability is a great thing. So are you being kind to yourself and taking care of yourself? The last thing is, are you being authentic with yourself? And what I mean by that is, do you realize really and live from who you are? God in form. I came up, as I was thinking about these things, I came up with these phrases, and I'm going to invite us into these phrases in a moment. You are light in form. You are love in expression. You are creativity walking. You are the life force talking. You are so special and so amazing. You are an emanation of God. When you know that, you're being authentic with yourself. So I want you, if you'd like to play, to say those things. Again, if you want, in the power position, and we're going to make them in the first person now, here it is. I am light in form.
I am light in form.
I am love in expression.
I am love in expression.
I am creativity walking.
I am creativity walking.
And the life force talking.
And the life force talking.
I am so special and amazing.
I am so special and amazing.
I am an emanation of God.
I am an emanation of God.
Yeah, and so it is. You are being authentic with yourself when you have a healthy relationship with the God of your being. So on this Valentine's Day, this is how we can get real in our relationships. Compassion for ourselves and others, kindness to ourselves and others, and authenticity with ourselves and others. And when we do that, we will do what Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, a 19th century French monk and mystic, said, and this I think is my favorite quote about love. He said, "The day will come when, after harnessing space, the winds, the tides, and the gravitation, we shall harness for God the energies of love. And on that day, for the second time in history, we shall have discovered fire." So let's close our eyes and step into that fire. That fire that births out life itself. That fire that lives in our hearts. That fire that burns in our soul. To be in harmonious, loving, sacred, God-centered relationships. That fire that burns within us, wanting to merge our conscious self with our higher self. That fire of passion within us that wants to create and live life fully. That fire that is the divine flame of God. In this moment, as we connect with it, recognize that it lives in us. We can give it, and we do give it birth today. We rediscover it today. And I accept and know for each of us as we go out into our week that we bring this fire of love through compassion, through kindness, through authenticity in every relationship we're in. In every relationship that we are in, we bring the fire of love. And as we do, because, as Ernest Holmes said, love points the way, and the law makes the way possible. As we bring the fire of love through compassion, kindness, and authenticity into our world and out into our relationships, we are so richly blessed. Paths are opened for expansion and growth, greater satisfaction, health, harmony, and prosperity, because that is simply the way it works. So I'm grateful for the way it works in our lives here today. I call it good, oh so very, very good. And with this, I let these words go. I trust that it is so. And together we say, and so it is. Amen.